Good evening, everyone. And thank you for inviting me back. Last year, when I was at this conference, it was a very special occasion for me and my wife Inga, and also my very, very good friend and colleague, Dr. Shankar Goenka. Yeah, just by the way, maybe while I'm sort of right at the beginning, every year in October, we have the Creativity and Innovation Conference in the world in South Africa. So many of you, I hope so, will be interested in joining us there. I think a year or so ago, there was about 20 or so people here from New Delhi that joined us at our conference. It's a very, very special occasion. And before I start, another thing I'd like to say, Mr. Goenka asked me, I must say something about unconscious competence. And I thought when he said that, bang, there was like a boom in my head. And suddenly I could link it to courage. Traveling all over the world, when you get to a city like New York or London or so, you get out of the airport and then you get to Avis or somewhere, Hertz, and you get a car and you drive. But I will never do that in India. Never do it in India. Luckily, my friend Shankar always picks me up, but I will never do it. And I realize why I will never do it. Because I think to drive a car in India, you need that unconscious courage. Courage that has evolved over years and years and years. And everyone driving cars, they don't even know they're courageous. But they are, of course they are, but it's sort of spontaneous. So for me as an outsider, I've got to develop that courage before I get into a car. So I think that was it. I'd like to, I'm going to be very brief tonight because, it's past 9 o'clock and I can read body language and facial expressions. I can read that very, very well. So I can kind of reading you now, and I can see, 9 o'clock, it don't take too long, so that's fine. I'm going to share basically two bits of my courage experiences with you, starting with the latter one and then going back with my experience of courage. And I'm going to do it more from a heart perspective than a mind perspective. I'm kind of one of those people who believe that you've got to combine those two. In one of the book on the future that was published a year or so ago in London, I wrote one of the chapters, and I ended the chapter by saying innovation of the mind without innovating the heart is no innovation at all. And I think that integration is critical. There are many, the parents are here tonight, the teachers and school principals. It's critical to understand in the education of human beings that both need to be innovated, that mind and the heart. You need to feel it out. Sometimes you've got to lean more towards the heart, sometimes more to the mind, but you kind of pick it up and you know how to respond. So let me start off with my experiences of courage then in the late 80s and the early 90s. It's an experience I've shared with some of the teachers before. I studied in the United States. I did a post-PhD in the identification and development of creative behavior. I came back to South Africa and I gave a series of talks on creativity and the importance to South Africa that was not in a good state. Those latter years of the 80s. After about 2 weeks, I was on a radio program every morning for about 2 weeks talking about this topic, and at the end of the 2 weeks, I had a phone call, and the person on the other end of the phone said that Mrs. Botha would like to talk to me. And I didn't know who Mrs. Botha was, and I said, sure, let me talk to Mrs. Botha. And so Mrs. Botha came on the phone, and then I realized it was the wife of the president of the country. And she was listening to the 2 weeks I was talking, and she said, I really like what you were saying about change and creativity, and coming from the president's wife, it was a strange, very strange comment. But anyway, she said, would you come and have tea with me this morning? And I needed a bit of courage to go, but I did go. They sent a car to pick me up. And every week or so, she invited me for tea, and then, after about a month or so, she said, my husband is here today. He would like to meet you. And that was the very feared, I may add, very feared president of the country of South Africa. And I also had fear in meeting him, I can tell you that. But there he was, and he first of all said, thank you for, spending time with my wife. She liked what you said. And then he said this, would you come and share your ideas with the cabinet of the country? Would you come and talk to my ministers? And that to me was something it was like a light in my mind here, because here I had the opportunity to say something that could have, I believed, a huge impact. And so I did, and I actually was invited twice. And what I realized then, here was a lot of people, and also the leader of the country, with a lot of creativity, a lot of ideas, but they completely lacked the courage to do what they needed to do. And that link between creativity and courage, just boom. I realized that is what often lacks completely in creative human beings. They have all the ideas, they see the future, but they just don't do it because they lack the courage to do it. A couple of years later, after our democracy, I was asked to write a TV series on, and the question came to me, they asked me the question, why did South Africa not have why didn't we have a revolution? We were supposed to have a revolution. And they asked me to write a TV series from a creativity perspective to have a look what happened. And something I will share when I speak to the students on Saturday, because I think it's part of leadership. I don't want to sort of focus on this now at the moment. But there was immense creativity amongst the people who sat around the table to negotiate a new future, and there was immense courage. Because everyone sitting around that table, every leader, there were many leaders, and most of them hated one another. Most of them hated one another, but they sat around the table with creativity and courage to create a new country. And so this is what I wrote about, and the series was called Creating a Miracle. But immediately after that, they also asked me to write a series called The Courage to Shake Hands with Tomorrow. And that was for me life-changing. But I had to delve into courage. I had to kind of seek, what is courage all about? What is the essence of courage? And it was a massive, massive learning experience. Because I met so many different people with different kinds of courage. I remember traveling on the plane from Johannesburg to Cape Town, and a man came and he sat next to me, and after a while he started to talk about his mother. Now, I'm not the one to talk a lot on the plane, but I've never heard someone talking about his mother on the plane. But, so I listened to him for about an hour or so. He was talking about his mother, and she seemed such a special person. And when we landed in Cape Town, I said to him, I've already written this series, but your mother seems so fascinating. Do you think we can include her in our series? Could I speak to her maybe? And he said, sure. And then I met this amazing woman living in a poor township, impoverished township, in a little hut. And she's a domestic worker working for people in Johannesburg. But this woman, single mother with 9 children, she had the courage to persevere, the courage to never give up. And all 9 of her children have university degrees. And the man sitting next to me on the plane had a PhD from Oxford. He was a university professor. The courage of a mother. And there was different kinds of courage. The courage of a little Nkosi Johnson, a 10-year-old boy, who stood up against the South African government on the policies of AIDS and changed South Africa, the face of South Africa, 10-year-old boy. And all these different, amazing, different kinds of courage. And I also learned that you need to understand the kind of courage that you personally need. Parents that come to me, for instance, who say that, I've got a very special 10-year-old daughter. She does so well at school, but she doesn't want to come on stage and at the Stetford and recite. She's afraid. And I said, what is she afraid of? And then I realized there's a social courage that one needs to enter a human space that is uncomfortable. But once you've entered that space, and you do it again and again and again, you've acquired a kind of courage that will be and keep with you until you die one day. So these were these different kinds of courage that I learned when I wrote that TV series, The Courage to Shake Hands with Tomorrow. But it started long before then. This kind of connection I had with courage. I was a young person when I got my doctorate, and I applied for a post. The post was the first planner for Gifted in Africa. And I got the post. And for a week I sat in an office not having a clue what to do. Didn't have a clue what I need to do now. I couldn't go to anyone because no one has ever had this job. And after a week, I went to the Director General of Education, Dr. Meyer. I said to him, I realized after a week after hard thinking a week, that's what I said. I was thinking for a week that I need to go on a sabbatical. I need to find out what are the best programs in the world. And so this is what I did. I went everywhere. Spent time at different universities and education departments. Everywhere I went. And I found the same kind of program everywhere. Everywhere I went, people saw giftedness as a person with A's, A pluses, and an IQ of 130 plus. That was giftedness. Everywhere, until I got to the University of Georgia, where I met a man that would change my life forever, Professor Paul Torrance. He said, no, that's academic giftedness, that's part of giftedness. But to go out there and change the world, to inspire the world, to have massive influence on people, you need much more than that. And that is when he started to introduce me to qualities, like Mr. Kant said here before me, like passion, for instance. You can't be creative and change the world without passion. And you can't change the world without courage. And you know what I saw in my research that was disappointing? I saw in my research that children until the age of 3 show this massive amount of creativity. I spoke about that last year when I was speaking to the teachers. There's a massive amount of creativity in children 0 to 3. They probe, they go, and with that creativity, you find this massive courage. Going under dark tables, moving around, going to the edges when I'm 10 months old. And all that child is screaming out to the parents now, maybe more to the mother than the father, is mentor me, nurture this. But of course it doesn't happen. And the reason it doesn't happen, that most parents in the world, everywhere, most parents in the world, they try to be very good parents. They really try. But no one has ever taught parents. And so parents, they carry on this, they think good, but often it doesn't work. So what do parents do when it comes to the creativity and the courage of their children? They curb it. They create safe little havens for their children, because it's difficult to manage courage and creativity, but it's easy to manage a safe little world. Instead of letting it go and managing it, it doesn't happen. So between the ages of 3 and 10, what we see is that both creativity and courage takes a massive dip. A massive dip. So I would tonight encourage parents in this room and students in this room. Go and have a look at the state of your creativity and the state of your courage again. Because the students specifically here at the beginning of a journey, in a sense, make sure that with all your other talents, and I've seen this today and I saw it last year too, huge talent in this room, huge talent in this room. Make sure that you have all the other qualities that you need to make your talents happen. There's something else I'd like to show you. There's also 2 choices you can have in this journey, parents and students. You can either choose a life and a journey above here or below this line. You are either in your life here or you are here. The thinking that you choose, the thinking to be courageous, the thinking to be sometimes a minority of one, sometimes to be in this room, that sometimes, specifically I'm talking to the students now, that you have to get up and say what you need to say. Take that moral stance and say what you need to say. Because if you don't, tonight you go home and you don't like yourself for not getting up. The minority of one, the kind of courage that you find up here. But you can choose thinking that will keep you here, and it can keep you here forever. You can choose a thinking that can paralyze you. You can choose a thinking that will make you negative permanently. And so if you're down here most of the time, you become a problem kind of person. And you don't want to be a problem leader. You want to be a solution leader. So here you find paralysis and here you find passion. Here you find pessimism and here you find optimism. And it's all to do with the choices that you make. And parents, you cannot expect your children to be courageous human beings up here if you're not courageous human beings. If you are a courageous human being, but you're prodding down here. For your children to be optimistic, you've got to be optimistic. For your children to be passionate, you've got to be passionate. So the other day again, the old quote that some people die at 22, but they get buried at 75. So let me end off, maybe using the words of a John Lennon. He said when he was 5 years old, his mother said to him, the essence of life is happiness. If you achieve happiness, you've achieved everything. And so at school one day, his teacher gave him an assignment. What do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, happy. And the teacher said, but you do not understand the assignment. And he said to the teacher, but you do not understand life. You do not understand life. And to end off with a story that I think shared with you last year, the kind of leader you need to be, the kind of parent you need to be. A story that was told to us many years ago by Daniel Goleman. He said he was a professor at the University of New York, and every morning at about 7 o'clock he stood at the bus stop waiting for the bus to take him to the university. And that particular morning, as he got onto the bus, he looked up and he saw it was a bus driver that he had never seen before. And as he was walking up the stairs, the bus driver put out his hand, said to him, good morning, sir. Thank you for being a passenger on my bus today. Have a nice ride. Just that. Daniel Goleman says he goes and he sits down and he watches this bus driver do this with all the different people as they get onto the bus. And to him, he feels so differently because, as he put it, it was the same route to the university, but it was a totally different journey. Same route, different journey. As he got off at the university, he was walking down the steps, same thing happened. Bus driver put out his hand, said to him, thank you, sir. I appreciate it and have a nice day. Just that. Just that. Daniel Goleman says he steps down and he stands on the sidewalk. Stands there for a minute or two. Can't move. Because he says, in that short bus journey, bus ride, his life changed forever. Because a question popped into his mind. When he told us that story, that same question popped into my mind. And I'd like to leave you forever with this question. What kind of bus driver are you? What kind of bus driver am I? And ask yourself tonight before you switch off the light, what kind of bus driver have I been today? People leave my school, my office, my house, my table, and they stand on the sidewalk. What do they say about me as the bus driver? My friends, in some way, we are all bus drivers, able to influence the lives of other people dramatically. Thank you very much. Thank you.